Amen. Praise the Lord, everybody.
Praise the Lord.
Amen. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Michael Reynolds. He is from the director of the Church of God Education Department. Let's thank God for his Can you please the Bible?
Bishop Dr. Michael D. Reynolds joined the Division of Education at Church of God International Offices as the Director of Ministerial Development and the Project Director of the Lilly Initiative in October 2018. Dr. Reynolds has served as an Associate and Affiliate Professor of Christian Ministries and Professor of Pastoral Theology at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School and Trinity International University. He also served as the Executive Director and Associate Dean of Trinity International University at the South Chicago Regional Campus in Dalton, IL. He served as Senior Pastor of New Life Celebration Church of God in Dalton, Illinois from 1992 to 2020. The church has 8 churches and has an elementary school that serves the community children from preschool to 8th grade. He serves as the president of the New Life Urban Educational Center, which is a discipleship arm for the church. In addition to his local responsibilities, he serves as chaplain for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Dr. Reynolds and his wife, Erica, have been married since 1981 and have 4 lovely children, Michael II, Selena, Jonathan, Cicely Reynolds, and are grandparents to 4 children, Michael Reynolds III, Chloe Reynolds, and Eric and Levi Dawkins.
Let's give Dr. Reynolds a hand.
Certainly it's my pleasure to be here with you today and to be here in Florida, and to be present with some of the best people there are on the planet. So I'm in a good place. I bring you greetings from Dr. Williams from the Division of Education. Glad to be here and glad to talk about an important subject and topic as we go through this morning's time together. Today, is there any way to kill the lights in the front? And the mic shows up. And the lights that are open be turned off? That's just a question. You might show that a little bit. And so today, my assignment, what I've been given to work through, is to talk about the African descent concept. And what is meant by that is, what are we saying when we're saying we're of African descent? So I'm going to travel through, hopefully, some mind-opening explanations connected to our historical past about what this concept means and how we might be able to use it. So I'll turn a little bit to catch the screens through, but that said at the top, African descent concept. Now, the ministry that Dr. Hill is over, there was a movement to change his name to African descent. The hope was that the name would be more inclusive. It would involve all people that have come out of the continent of Africa and thereby creating a larger group of network and connectivity with one another than some of the other previous terms might have done. So as you know, people in the United States, people of color in the United States, particularly descendants of Africa, have been called all kinds of names. Some of them cannot be repeated in this room, and some of them can. And of course, it was an honor to call a person of color. It moved to certainly call a person that was black, then black fell into disrepair, then African American. Then African American meant people who did their slavery here in America, even though people were descendants of Africa from all over the world and had traveled to Europe. When people said who had their history in America, people would even correct you and say, no, I'm Caribbean, or no, I'm from Europe, and thereby correct that they weren't African American. And so there's been a lot of discussion about what term is right. And so that falls to this term that's being used now, people of African descent. So though there is a claim there, I would like to argue through, or at least have a discussion as we're going through this process about what does that mean and what does it historically mean. There's still a wide share of rejection about belonging to Africa. The marketing for Africa, the exposure of what Africa has been throughout the time has been so negative, and thereby many people, even people who are of African descent, don't necessarily want to be connected to the continent of Africa because they believe that it somehow is a reverse process of affirmation about who they are. I have been to Africa on, I think it's 7 occasions. I've been to 5 different countries that have been there, and I am overwhelmingly impressed by Africa, overwhelmingly impressed about their accomplishments, their advancements, and who and what Africa is. And so I challenge you, if you've been to Africa, that's incredible. If you haven't, I challenge you to go there so you can connect with the motherland in a way that will affirm you and get away from what you've been watching on television. So if somebody wants to say they're a blank whole country and nobody wants to be from their continent, we have got to have other narratives being told to us about who we are, because that's still connected back to our existence and our history. So we'll travel a little bit through Africa and we'll find our way ending up about what we should do to promote the concept of becoming one united people in our understanding of what does it mean to come from the sun. If you want, I guess you click, so I got a power here. Let's just get it move, but point in a certain direction. It move.
No. I think we are pointing at the screen.
Pointing to the screen.
No, pointing where they
All right. That says, though, it's difficult to read. I'm not choosing that color now, but that says Africa the land. So let's travel through a little discussion about Africa the land, and we'll go through why we want to be called people of African descent, what the affirmation is about that, and what does it mean to us as people, and how can we promote that kind of understanding among each other in a way that affirms us and affirms us in the minds of other people. First of all, go ahead to the next slide. First of all, African continent. So a lot of people will say, are you from the country of Africa? Well, Africa is made up of 54 countries, and 55 countries if you include Western Sudan, sometimes included, sometimes not. But again, 55, sometimes you don't realize that 55 countries are in Africa making up making up 1/4 of the world's countries. This is roughly about 200 countries. I'm sorry. There is roughly about 200 countries that are recognized in the world, slightly under that, about 196, 198, according to the flex that goes back and forth, whether we recognize Palestine and whether we recognize some of the other places. But anyway, it makes about 1/4 Second to that is the population of Africa. The population of Africa is at 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion people that are there for Africa. And again, that makes up about 20% of the world's population. By 2050, it's estimated that there's going to be another billion people. Africa is one of the fastest growing continents in the world. And right now, it's the second largest. It's anticipated that it might become the largest continent in the world. And so it'll be 2.5 of another billion people by 2050. By 2100, it is estimated that there's going to be about 5 billion people. 4 billion people, 4 billion people in Africa. So Africa is growing by young people, one of the youngest continents in the world. So it's growing by young people that are there. Ethnic groups, there's about 3,000 ethnic groups, and again, that makes up about 40% of all ethnic groups in the world. Africa is the most diverse continent in the world. In other words, there are the diversity of people meeting different people, what they look like. Somebody says, well, you look like you're from Africa. Impossible. Because if you travel the continent of Africa, you'll find every color, every shade, every head size, every head, tall people, short folk, everybody from Watusis to pygmies, you know. I mean, Africa is the most genetically diverse people in the world. Now, there's genetic proof of that, and therefore the reason why is the diversity in the world, and it emanates from this place of Africa. But languages, in terms of languages that are there, there is estimated to be somewhere between 1,500 to 3,000 languages that are spoken in Africa, based on whether you call it a dialect or a language. There's some discussion there. You can default to 1,500 or go up to 3,000. And again, that makes up about, a third of the world's languages. Being in the continent of Africa, a third of the world's languages are being spoken there in Africa. To show you the diversity of the people that are there and who's there and what's going on. Natural resources and wealth. We always hear about how poor Africa is. Well, 30% of all of the natural resources and wealth are in Africa. Gold, silver, gas, oil in Africa. There's a reason why people want to go there. There's a reason why people want to colonize. No. Somebody get the button for me again.
Hold on, 1 second.
Okay, that's what Africa, the land looks like, and so just a diversity of just appearance. Go on to the next slide. I'll keep moving. So if you were to take Africa, when you look at a map and you look at Africa on a map, it is always distorted. Not distorted large, it's distorted small. That's right. So some of them have argued the fact that because it's because of its position, the way that the globes are made, that has caused some of the distortion of Africa. Well, the reality is that Africa was distorted on purpose. There are all kinds of places that look like they're larger and bigger than Africa is, and they are not. If you took, for example, you could take all of the United States, you could take all of China, you could take most of Europe, you can take most of the Middle East and you can put it in Africa, and as you can see from here, you still wouldn't cover all of Africa. That's how huge it is. That's how large Africa is as a place. That's when we start saying, I'm somebody of African descent. I am somebody who hails from a place that is a huge territory with diverse languages, with diverse ethnic people, with diverse DNA. So when somebody says, this is what you look like when you're from Africa, no, that's why all of us look the way we look. Because we come from there. You'll meet people in Africa that look like they're almost white, and people in Africa that look like, some people call it blue black, but you know what I'm saying. Next slide. I'm going to keep going before I get in trouble. They're dark, they're dark. And the beauty of being dark, you know how beautiful it is when you're dark, that's why everybody tries to get there. Yeah, it's so strange that people want to talk about being black, and they try to be black. That's another discussion. So let me talk about Africa as the origin, because when we talk about what it means to be a people of African descent, the reality is, I'm about to argue to you that everybody is African.
Amen.
And then when we talk about this, Africa is the origin of man, the out of Africa, which is the small A, which means out of Africa. It is the philosophical, theological, and also very important scientific argument when we come out of Africa. OOA, you need to record that, write it down, you need to look it up, you need to Google it after you leave me, out of Africa. It is that scientific proof that shows that there's a movement of people that started on the continent of Africa and moved away. Now there are some discussions about where is it going to be, and some discussions about the Bible, and some discussions about how we put all this together. Well, we could go into some talks about the continent's shift, and whether the Middle East isn't the Middle East, we just call the Middle East for some political reasons to separate from Africa, just like Egypt is never one that they don't want to put in Africa, they want to call it North Africa. Look, it's Africa. The 16th dynasty of Egypt, look at the 16th dynasty of Egypt. The 16th dynasty, every one of the rulers is black. Then when you look at the pyramids, which I'm going to get lost here for a minute, but these pyramids exist in the sub-Sahara of Africa. They already are there. So people say, oh, you know, only Egypt has these pyramids, and the pyramids of the sub-Sahara of Africa, and they exist. My point is only this, is that this movement of people begins in Africa and moves from there. So I'll leave it at that for now. We'll see if there's questions later. This is scientific discovery, archaeological discovery. This isn't a microrealism spot. This isn't something I put together. This is, look, the oldest people that we found, Morocco, Ethiopia, and South Africa, the oldest skeletons that we found that we know are connected to us being human are found in Africa. There is one that's found in the Middle East. There's some discussion about what's going on with the one from the Middle East. But almost every one that has been scientifically proven out, these are the discoveries of who would have been humanoids are there in Africa. So the origin of man is well-rounded that came out of Africa. And so there's a reason for us to have an affirmation about who we are next time. So here's the movement of man. So when you did, how many people did their DNA? How many people found out things they didn't want to know? How many people found out things they didn't want to know? Everybody thought they were king of France and something. He was a thief, a robber. Oh no, I don't know. So the reason why they were able to map the genome, map your DNA, is because when they went back, they said, look, we can do zoning. And what it really means is that they can find out where you spent the most amount of time, because your genes are a direct copy of your parents. You're 46 and 46. They argue with each other, create the 46 is you. It is a complete copy of your parents. The only reason why you and your brother don't look exactly alike is because the 46 argue with the other 46. But you get an exact copy of your parents, which means you are a total copy of yourself all the way back to Adam and Eve.
Right.
So Adam and Eve fostered. So when everybody believed that we were from Adam and Eve, and there were multiple, what they called polyverse, that there were all these different Adam and Eves, and that black people came from, and Asian came from, and white folks came. No, there's absolutely no evidence. Matter of fact, this was proved in the process that we are so close as being a people that we are 99.9% exactly alike. Now to understand that there is no chimpanzee, there's no ape, there's no monkey, there's nothing that has that kind of clarity and that kind of affirmation like this time. We are the same people that came forth from Adam and Eve, and that DNA makeup. Now this is the the piece about that, that argues that we have a joint heritage of where we came from. So here is the movement. This isn't my movement. This is a scientific movement, and it is also verified by any genetic person today that's looking back and telling you where you came from and where your history is. When you look back at your history, it moves out of Africa, moves into Asia, moves into Europe. There's some that moves down to Australia, moves over, then again coming back through the Bering Strait, coming over to what we call the New World, and then going down to Mexico and going down into South America. But this is that movement that's there. This is the movement that scientists have said in migration, there are two immigrations, an immigration with an I and an immigration with an E. Immigration with the I, easy way to remember that is to mean that you're immigrating in. Immigration with the E means you're immigrating out, and migration means a movement usually in the same location that you're in. This migration within Africa that caused a immigration, which was the exiting out of Africa, and the immigration coming into the other parts of the world, this movement that occurred, all when they keep going back, it's time to be in Africa. And so you can tell somebody when you're talking to them, they say, well, you're from Africa, so you're going too. After the kingdom. So this, first of all, this is this whole this thing about after the land. What is after the land? So when I say that I'm of African descent, why is that different from saying some of the other things that I could possibly say? Because it names a land. See, for a long time, people were saying, I'm Irish American, I'm Italian American. They can name a land, a place. But for you to have said before that I'm simply just black, I'm colored, it doesn't name a history, it doesn't connect you to a place. In a sense like this, it connects you to a place. I'm of African descent. My family came from Africa, and I am a direct descendant of the people that are there, and stayed along with the rest of y'all stayed. So after the kingdom, what went on in after the kingdom next one? So we can understand the history of our people. Because you were told that we were not civilized, that we were just running around, and we had these little skirts on, and we were drinking blood out of animals, and voodoo was what we were into, and on and on and on about what was said to be of who the people of Africa were. Well, the first kingdoms that can be identified are in Africa. Remember, there are no cavemen in Africa. There's no such thing as a caveman in Africa. Cavemen were in Europe, where it was cold. They had to hide out in caves. We didn't have to be in caves. It was warm. So when you got cage or that's not us. We weren't. So when a guy walks around, that wasn't us. So, but the civilizations, the kingdoms, they were massive kingdoms in Africa. The history has been hidden from us on purpose. And these kingdoms were extremely prosperous, they were very strong, and they were very powerful. People were afraid to come there. There's a female queen that's in Africa during the times of when the Roman Empire was present, and when Caesar came in and tried to attempt to take over that part of Africa, which is the piece that's there by Ethiopia, he fought her for so long and gave up and said, forget it, we don't want the land anymore. Because he could not take that land. They fought in guerrilla warfare. They had designs, ways to fight back. The Zulu fought the British for so long. And so all I'm simply saying is that there were kingdoms, and here are a list of those kingdoms. If you want to write down one or two of those kingdoms and look them up, historical civilizations, kingdoms that created the whole concept of law, legal, all the things that were present. Let's go on to the next one. Africa has a long history of art. So there was already, you always look at the best of art, customs agents study art, and study where art comes from. The long history of art is in Africa. Beautiful history, detailed history, where it's all one piece out of one piece of wood, one piece of metal, those kinds of things. Also writing, that we didn't write. Well, writing, arithmetic, geometry, all those kinds of things existed in ancient Africa. In farming, we were the best farmers in the world. Let me tell you how good we were. We were so good that when they went to go and move slaves to the United States, particularly even to the Carolinas, anybody from the Carolinas? Particularly from the Carolinas, where they went to move them there, they picked tribes to move to grow the particular kinds of rice and the particular kind of wheat and the particular kinds of cotton that they wanted, because these people that they got were so good at farming that they used them to cause the farming in the United States. Still today, the rice that is used in the United States is not Oriental rice. It is a rice that was brought from Africa to the United States, and it's foreign to the United States. That rice was brought here and fostered by people that understood that rice here in the United States. That's the rice that's used. Next slide. Mansa Musa, have anybody heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is still registered today as the richest man ever to live in the world. He's still registered as the richest person when you take the amount of gold that he had. He literally, now he was over one of the empires here in the United States next to Ghana. And he literally goes to, he was Muslim, he goes to Egypt and Alexandria. Alexandria is having a money problem. He goes there and he puts so much gold in Alexandria when he is there, it bankrupts, it causes the system to have, and not bankrupt, but inflation. He causes so much inflation because he put too much money into the marketplace that it ruins the economy. That's how much. He came and said, I have you all put too much gold into the marketplace. He rode on horses that had gold. His armor was in gold. He was still today registered as the richest man ever lived in the world. Next. From Africa. Africa's resources. Why was there such an interesting process? So we started calling ourselves African, people of African descent. We're calling ourselves people who come out of resources. Now, you normally think of Africa in the reverse. People not of resources. Next slide. Africa has been known for a long time to be a place of gold, a place of armor, a place of ivory, and a place of salt. Salt was extremely important. It was the only way to check corruption, or when things would become corrupt. You know, the food we were having, you needed salts. And so salts were at times even more valuable than gold itself. Next slide. Here's a chart that just shows you all of Africa and how and what kinds of resources are throughout Africa. That's why we can say that Africa dominates in resources for the world. Right now, one of the places making the most investments throughout the world, the country that's making the most investments throughout the world is over-investing in Africa. Does anybody know what that country is making the most investments? China. China is over-invested in Africa, no mistake, no, because they know the resources that are there. They're trying to, there's a water power plant that's in Ghana that was created in Ghana so that Ghana could come off of any dependency on European power. And they were selling their power to the other Ivory Coast nations that were there so they could come off of European power. That power point now, since the Chinese have come in, is owned by the Chinese. They're building highways, they're building everything they can because they know of the resources that are there and how wealthy the land is. That's why Africa was attacked like it was. They'll say it's because the people weren't smart, because the people didn't know what's going on, because they needed people of labor. No, they wanted their land, and they wanted their hard-working, what they want to call you lazy. It should have made no sense to make us slaves if you're lazy, but let's do that before. Next slide. And if we were so lazy, how would we be cooking your food, working in the fields, breastfeeding your children? We were lazy and birthing your babies. I would do that alone. That's why in the United States, and probably I just know this fact from the United States, but in the United States, the average black person is anywhere between 10 to 25% European. why they are. Is it because there was a love connection? It's because your ancestors got raped. They got raped because they stopped shipping over slaves and it became too expensive to try to get slaves, so they birthed them themselves, and they themselves, the masters, went in to a married woman with her husband there and had sex with her and birthed children in there. You had all these blue-eyed, blonde-haired, black kids running around on the plantation. Now leave that alone, because then I have to talk about one of your presidents and how many people and that's the response to slavery. It's like, come on, man, come on, help me out. I said, go ahead and talk about it. Oh, well, you know, he took her to Europe. She said, I'm in Europe right now, in France. I don't have to go back with you. I do not have to return. He was so in love with her. She was his wife's half-sister, okay? And looked just like his wife had passed away. So when she said, when Sarah Hendricks, when she said she didn't want to go back, he so loved her, he said, oh, no, you have to go back with me. She said, on one day, my children will be set free when at the end of our time. My children will be set free by him. And that's the condition she made to return back to the United States with him. And he was in love with her. All right. That's a side story. Y'all told me to tell it. Go back one slide for a second. This is the land occupation. Now, when people say that Africa was nothing, Africa was no place, and there was no place of interest, right? Then tell me why every place in Africa was colonized by somebody from Europe. Why every place except Ethiopia is the only land that has not been controlled and has not been ran outside of Africa. Every other part, and these are the countries that control them. There's a gentleman in Belgium, we talk about the 60 million. There's estimates as many as 50 million people he killed over in Africa that he killed over in the Congo when he ran Belgium. Nobody talks about that. We have to come up with a name for it, like the Holocaust, but we have to talk about it. So again, every part of it was colonized. Why? It wasn't just that people were taken from there, the land was taken there because of the resources that were there. Africa is a very prominent place. Best place to be. People will say, why aren't with all these expositions coming out of Africa? Why are the Vikings flying? Well, if I was in a cold land like the Vikings, I'd get on a boat and go somewhere too. But if I'm in a great place like Africa, what am I leaving for? It's like being in Florida or something. So this causes the diaspora of the African people. We are all over the world. And so this causes the diaspora. So let's take a look at this just for a moment. Next slide. Now, I gotta get a little bit closer just for a moment. But most people don't know the second largest African descent country in the world is not in Africa. It's in Brazil. It's in South America. Brazil, which I don't know how many times that is, but Brazil had the largest movement of African slaves of any country. When you think about the United States. The United States, total population of moving people is one of the less for moving people. Brazil is number one. More Africans were taken to Brazil. And you think we forget about places like Colombia, Venezuela, all those countries have black people, all of them, and have black heritage. You can't talk about being from Puerto Rico unless you establish the fact that at least 30 is black. So here's the countries that are laid out. Brazil still possesses in millions the largest number of people that are there. And then as you come down with France, Venezuela, Jamaica, the UK, and then interesting to a lot of people is Mexico. If people were escaping to Canada, people were escaping to Mexico. Now this is also true. There are look to read. You want to look to read black people in North America before the Mayflower. Okay, so there are blacks already in Mexico. The first black president in North America, Mexico is North America. How many times they say it wrong?
Right.
Mexico is in North America, not just Canada. But the first black president in North America is in Mexico. And one of his names actually means the black one. He is of African descent. He is the first. Obama was not the first black president in North America. He was, and he was in Mexico. Mexico has a long presence of blacks that have been in Mexico, 1,200 of already being there and being present there. And then there's a number of slaves that escape down into Mexico when they leave. So Mexico has a presence, still has a 1.4. There's still islands in Mexico they practice African traditional religion, a number of things that are there. Okay. So the first thing is to understand that blacks are all over the world and the diaspora. Next. Now the slave trade, not only have we moved by migration or by immigration, the slave trade forced us into different parts of the world itself. The African nation and kingdoms that supplied the African slave trade. These are the countries that were present while the slave trade is going on. Most of the people in this room, whether you're from Jamaica, whether you're from Haiti, whether you're from the United States, whether you're from Great Britain, you came out of one of those countries, more than likely the other place. There are two Eastern countries that people don't really remember. There are Eastern African countries that people have come from that are here, but this is the majority of the people from Africa and the countries that we came out of. It shows the connectivity to one another. So we are so connected to each other. It's not just like we're from all over Africa. We're from concentrated areas of Africa and still came over very much familiar with who we were and what was going on. Next one. The ports that we exited from. These are none of the ports of no return. Some of you have probably been there. It's a very emotional time when you go there, when you stand there and you get to the point you walk through, you have to bend down. You cannot get into the boat unless you bend down from the ports. And you have to bend down and get into the boat to go in. The shocking is that when you stand on the floor on the outside, the Portuguese priest had a home inside of there where he was having services and taking care of the people that were there while all this was going on, while all this was happening. There's a priest that is there. Despite the fact that there is a large number for Ghana, for example, there's a large number of mulatto children that all live right around there, that while they were there, while the slave traders were there, and how many people they were actually having sex with and doing while they're saying they believe in Jesus. But there's been a long history of people believing in Jesus. So these are the ports that we would have came out. You can see that's all on that what's called the Ivory Coast. It's all on the horn that's there. So where we came from. Next slide. That's transportation. That's how we got here. Boats, as they left from there and came here, we were chained and locked next to each other. That was defecation. That was urination. That was everything. Many people died. Now, in two ways normally that people die. They estimate somewhere between high numbers, 25 million people out of Africa at a time when the total population of the world is in millions. 25 million people out of Africa, talking about the change of a country. 25 million people were around. Now, the low number is 12 million. 12 million is a low number. That's a conservative number of how many people were moved out of Africa. Now, a low number for how many people died on the trip coming here is 2 million. 2 million people died coming here, either by catching diseases or what have you, while in the boats, while they're chained together like this with one another for a long boat ride coming here. And then if you got sick, if you look like you sick, do you know what they did? They threw you over, and now you know what happened because they threw so many people overboard. It changed the trajectory of the sharks from birthing their children. Sharks learned to follow the ships and wait for people to be thrown overboard because they were still out and eat them while they're being thrown overboard. can stay there because somebody will get mad. Let's go to the next one. Here's the movement that happens, and this is why we say I'm Caribbean, I'm UK, I am African American, I'm from Canada. This is why we say what we say. We need to understand this. You are all picked up in the same countries. So we want to act like we that different of people. No, we were picked up in the same place. You just was put on boat A, I was put on boat B, and you looking at your cousin, hey Johnny! And now today we say, no, I'm Caribbean. No, we were picked up in the same country. We are so connected. Say to somebody next to you, you are connected today. You might have a British accent, you might have a French accent, you might have a Caribbean accent, but that was given to you. They gave that to you. There was a time and a place when we looked at each other and said, bro, what's up? No, that's not what we said. But here's the movement. So as the movement exists, when the boats leave out from Portugal. Portugal was the biggest boat moving boat for slavery of any. Okay. So the boat leaves out, it comes into Africa, and when it comes to Africa, they have textiles, rum, goods to sell to Africa. Remember, everybody is not kidnapped. There's a number of people that are actually in trade in Africa. I always love to go to Africa. And I'll say, why are you still here? And then I'll say, what do you mean? Why are you here? And I got stolen. You owe me. Take me to dinner tonight. So somebody saw somebody, that's all I'm saying. And they were running up the back streets of Africa, I'm telling you, having worse than New York or Chicago. But anyway, the trades happen here. As the trades happen, then the boat will come across, and then slaves were dropped off from South America to Central America to Caribbean islands to North America, and then back to the UK, slavery in the UK. That's how people were moved, but we were all being moved together. We have a history. It's very tightly connected with one another. But this is called a triangular slave trade. So things were dropped off from each place. Okay, next slide. Now, this shows the movement of numbers. We can't really see them real well, real close. I'll walk over here just for a minute. But we have point 3 going up into Europe, point 3 going to the United States, 4.5 people going to the West Indies, and then Brazil has 5 million, some as many as 6 million. But again, those are the numbers of the people that are moved that end up there, and still that does not anticipate the burst in slavery. The number of people that were born in these countries and their descendants. There was a change in Africa that was huge. That many people were stolen, taken away, and you got the healthiest, you got the brightest, you got the sharpest people that you could, because that's who you wanted as slaves. At a time, talking about outdoing gold, slaves outdid gold. The having slaves is the way you bought more land. You said, I got this many slaves. Slaves had such value to them. And so it is this value that's going on. Look at the next slide. Now, we all know about the transatlantic slave trade. That in the bigger the area is, the more people got moved there. That's a transatlantic slave trade. What we don't know is the slave trade that occurred into upper Africa, and most interesting is the Indian slave trade. That was a slave trade that went on into the Middle East. It is that slave trade that has been hidden for some time, and that's the number of people living. Still, if you go to Sri Lanka, down from India and down from Pakistan, you go to a country called Sri Lanka, they still practice the African religion there, they still do all the African customs that are there, they look African, they still intermarry with one another. There's whole tribes of people in Sri Lanka. And these people moved across in India, Pakistan, Turkey, all these other countries that were there, Iran, Iraq, they all have history of black people being there. They were actually moved there too. Next slide. So, with people in the diaspora moving to all these different parts of the world and we being all over the world, there then became this push to start talking about what does Pan-Africanism mean? How do we reconnect ourselves back to our motherland as everybody else was doing with their motherland? What does that mean for who we are as people? And so we'll talk just a moment about that, Pan-Africanism. Next slide, I'm sorry. Here's some of the people, and some that you'd imagine, like Marcus Garvey, W. Du Bois, who are some of the people that began this process of what did it mean to start thinking about us as a people together and not being segmented and divided apart from one another. Next slide. The most significant amounts of people, as I said before, Europe, North America, the Caribbean, Latin America, still these are your highest concentrations of people. That's why Hispanics is not a racial group. So you never say, what are the races? If there was such thing as race, Hispanics wouldn't be one of them. Hispanics is just having a historical ethnic connection with a language that connects them together. But despite the fact that you look at Telemundo and you don't see dark-skinned people on there, you should. There are tons of dark-skinned people who are of Hispanic descent that are present, that are there. So there are large numbers of people, and we populate all of these countries collectively. Next slide. This kind of blending of us across the world has created a kind of ethnogenesis. Ethnogenesis is the creation of brand new ethnic groups that did not exist. When you create a new genetic group, when you create a new customs and history of people, then you create an ethnogenesis. This creation of new people, next slide. This creation is there. When it occurs, it bursts this kind of newness. Africans have the largest ethnogenesis of any group of people because of where we moved, where we had to be, what happened, forced transportation. And it calls these for us, I mean, you can meet somebody that's just like you, they're speaking another language, they have another accent. Why? Because we have adopted to every place that is, including Russia, in the world. Next slide. Ethnogenesis, cultural fusion. That means we have fused with the culture that was there. Talk about adaptable people. We always say, what is it about the African? The African adapted to every culture he was in, she was in. Cultural fusion. And then while we adapted to the culture we were in, this is absolutely incredible by Africans. We created something in their culture that had never existed before. It was African by nature. So jazz was never existed before. We created it. As we came here, we created, we took their language and we created language out of their language, and we learned that language. And we were so done walking around all your languages, and you all still can't speak If you watch a movie, it's always funny to me when you watch a movie. But if you watch a movie, it's always funny to me because they will, if they duplicate like Spanish or something, the person will really speak in Spanish. If they duplicate something like French or something, the person will really speak in French. But this,